Hey loves, it's your favorite blind girl, back on your screen with another one. It's been a minute. I haven't sat here and talked to the camera in a long time. I've been living that vlog life. Hope you've enjoyed so far. But today we're going to talk about some blind, unpopular opinions of mine. I figured since it's the 17th, exactly 4 months to the day since I've been living this life on lockdown, why not get a little controversial with it and talk about some of these opinions of mine that I know are going to ruffle a few feathers. So whether you disagree or agree, leave it for me in the comment section below. Sight Squad, Blind Fam, I want to know, and let's go. Starting off strong, it is not the end of the world to lose your vision. I know a lot of you are going to come for me, especially the ones that have been DMing me lately. When you're newly diagnosed and you take it in, if you're not like me, because as you know, the story goes, I was in denial for the first couple of years and it hit me like a brick of walls or wall of bricks or whatever the saying is. It is not the end of the world. As strange as it sounds, worse things can happen to you than losing your sight. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's facts. I'm not going to get into my personal too much because that's not really what my platform's about. But I will say, in the grand scheme of things, look, we're living through a pandemic. If anyone told us a year ago, would we believe them? You can still live. You can still breathe. I'm still here filming for you. You're still alive wherever you are watching this video. So just take it day by day. Stay positive. Be present. Be grateful. You'll be okay. Another unpopular opinion to spin off of that first one is that it is not suffering. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, optional. I'm sure you heard of that quote before. It is true. People have messaged me and commented that they're suffering with Stargard's or with RP or with any other optical. Even people message me about like any disease or anything they're going through, any diagnosis. The idea of suffering, yes, it is hard to live life like this. No denying it. But it is a choice to decide to suffer with grace and accept what's going on and not let it consume you, or push past whatever's going on and allow it to strengthen you. Deciding to not let this consume you is the harder option, but trust me, take it from me, the years that I was depressed about my vision between 25 and 27 were way worse than living my life now, because when I look back, I had way more vision than I had then, but I was so miserable about my prognosis. I never really enjoyed the vision that I had. And each day I wake up, I really take in how much vision I have because it's not guaranteed. Like if anything we've learned about 2020, life is not guaranteed. Life as it is not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. So I think it's way better for you to decide to not suffer. It's going to be hard. That's why I say struggling. But just choose not to suffer. Well, the times we're in has brought up another unpopular opinion, which is that being Black is definitely harder, more trying than being blind. This is just my opinion, but when people meet me, they see me as a Black person first, and maybe as they get to know me or have a conversation or start to realize I'm not making eye contact, then they realize I'm visually impaired. It's not something that they can see because I don't have a dog or a cane or the stereotypical things that people associate with being blind. And because of that, I feel like I can choose to disclose that. I'm proudly fully Black. I'm never going to try to distract from that or be anything else. But with everything that's going on in the world in America, I think it's very obvious that there are some very innate problems with racism, discrimination, colorism, and all of that stuff. So I would say, personally, in my experience, that being blind has almost been more of a eye-opener than my whole life living Black and then being blind for like the last 10 years of life. Like, I find I get more sympathy when I share a story about how I've been undermined about being blind than being Black. A lot of times people will be like, oh, it's just in your head when I talk about something that's obviously racist. Whereas when I talk about something that's obviously discriminatory, people relate more. And I guess maybe it's a human thing. I don't know. But I just... This next opinion gets under my skin, and I know it's unpopular and a lot of people are probably going to come for me, but just because I'm disabled doesn't mean I'm just going to go on welfare or social assistance or there's disability relief or funds because I'm in Canada. Being a Canadian is great, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of benefits to being a Canadian, especially living in the six, but let me tell you, there are no benefits that are available for me to live the lifestyle that I lead. And even if I did, gotta keep it real with you, I wouldn't want to. I'm not the type of person to want to be dependent on the government or my family or anything like that. I feel my best when I'm pursuing something, when I'm being productive, And when I'm trying to find fulfillment, I might not find fulfillment in everything I do every day of my life, but as long as I'm in the pursuit of something more and being better than I was yesterday, that's when I feel like my best self. Honestly, I don't know why so many people go to that as like, oh, well, you don't have to work. You live in Canada. Just go live on. No, that's not an option. And even if it was, let's put it this way. I'd have to live in a house, a roach-infested house with like 10 roomies. Not about that life. The blind community is not as peachy, not as connected as I'd like it to be. In my experience, it's been about 50-50. I've met some of the most gracious, amazing, resilient people. And I'm grateful that I met them, even though the circumstances and what we relate on is not the best. But on the other hand, I met some people that are just a little shady, just a little too, you're here and I'm here, or you're not blind enough, or you can't say you're blind because X, Y, and Z. I'm legally blind. That's what it is. I absolutely cannot, I just cannot with some people when it comes to feeling like they are better than because they are more successful, or putting on like they actually care about the community, but they're just using it as a way to build their platform. Like I can't. Another one of my unpopular opinions is that blind people can be independent. I can't tell you the amount of times people are like, wait, why do you work? I don't understand. I wouldn't work if I was you. This is too much work. Like having to adapt, I just wouldn't. Okay, that's cool for you. I don't give up on myself. Just saying. Also, it's not like I can just fall back on my family. I mean, they're there if I absolutely need them, but I don't live in a family where we're like this, where I can just go back home and just fall into place or just rely on people. That's not the situation I'm in. If you are, like, trust me, count your blessings. But there's a lot of people, I know I'm not the only one, that don't have that kind of connection with their family where they can depend financially or emotionally when it comes to matters of sight. And I think it's very insensitive when people just assume, oh, well, you're blind. I think it's very irresponsible of you to live independently and like just work and not really have like this clear path or this 10-year plan based on how your vision's going to go, because no one knows what's going to happen with the vision. Maybe it'll get worse. Maybe it'll stay the same. Maybe there'll be a cure. But I'd rather live day by day, have some long-term goals, but still keep it real. And I hate when people try to tell me how to live my life. A lot of times people's 2 cents are limitations on this limitation. People like to tell me how to spend my money. Oh, you're blind. You shouldn't waste your money on clothes or shoes or going out. Like you have, that shouldn't be important to you. Shouldn't I decide what's important to me? I'm not going to tell you to spend your money on. I don't know what it is with people. As soon as they find out that you're disabled, they want to kind of control and tell you how to live your life and optimize. But really, what is optimal? Because what's good for me might not be good for you and vice versa. That leads to another one. I'm kind of upset with the blind fam. I've had this experience one too many times where someone will tell me, oh, you're not blind enough. Okay, cool. I get it. I might not be blind, but being legally blind is equally hard in different ways. I can't stand when people who are going through a similar struggle diminish mine or others. Whether you comment and you say, hey, I was diagnosed yesterday, or you're diagnosed in 10 years, I'm not looking at one or the other as worse off, because we're all going through these experiences in different ways. We're all going to be impacted by all the other pieces of the puzzle in our lives. And just because I was diagnosed 10 years ago doesn't mean I'm any better off than you. And I don't think it's fair for me to judge you the same way you should judge me. A lot of people comment this. You should really get a dog or a cane. It's irresponsible that you haven't learned Braille yet. I think it's a little irresponsible that you're assuming that those 3 things are the 3 things that I need, if I've time and time again explained specifically what I would need as adaptive technology to help my life be easier with my impairment. It's so weird when people are like pushing these 3 things on me, because I just can't explain it enough. The way that my disease deteriorates and progresses, hopefully, I will never need those things. I mean, if something else comes into the mix, maybe then I'll need it. But as far as Stargardt disease goes, I shouldn't need any of those 3 things at any point. If I want to learn how to use a cane or Braille or eventually get a guide dog far along the road, then that's my business. Accessibility isn't one size fits all. One thing I've noticed whenever I've done any panels or speaks, people ask me as if I'm like the designated blind person. What does a company need, or what should I need to know, or what should an organization do to accommodate blind people? And I say it every single time. It's a person-to-person, case-by-case situation. If I say I need X, Y, and Z, that's me as a person who's living with Stargardt disease. But even another person living with Stargardt disease or RP might need something different. So it's not for me to say, oh yeah, all of us need to have a white tape on a glass wall so we don't walk into the door or whatever. It's different for person to person. And I think there needs to be a conversation whenever you meet a legally blind person as an employee, as an educator, as anyone who's in a situation of a power dynamic, to really find out what that person needs in order to properly help them. I'm a little prideful with this one, but I think Toronto is the most accessible city I've been to. I'm not a world traveler. I wish I was like lost in the blank, but really and truly, I've been to quite a few cities and countries, and I'm grateful, especially now that the Rona is making that nearly impossible for the next foreseeable future. I would say that out of Brussels, Paris, Antigua, I don't know where else I've been, parts of the States, Toronto is one of the most accessible cities. And every time I come back home, like when I came back from Marrakesh, you do not understand how appreciative I was for the buttons to make the sing sound so I could cross. I never realized until I started traveling visually impaired how other countries and cities haven't accommodated disabled people in general. Like there'll be times where I'm walking and I'm like, ooh, like this sidewalk is trippy for me. Imagine someone with one leg or a wheelchair. Like I think about those things. I'm not always looking from the perspective of a blind person, but a perspective of someone who's trying to function as well as possible. Okay. This unpopular opinion is definitely going to piss someone off, but I don't care. I don't think the world should change for us. I do think there should be more accessibility and adaptation, especially in the workplace. But for the whole world to change, no. I think it's more important that we as individuals decide to empower ourselves and have the efficacy to find ways to educate our circles and our community and our family and help us, instead of asking the world to change. Like I'm not going to go around and petition for the city to make all the signs larger so blind people can see that. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that helps enough of a population. I don't think it's reasonable. I do think that there should be more changes that don't only impact people with Stargardts or blind people or disabled people, but impact everybody and just make everyone's life better. I think a lot of times when we're going through something, we forget that not the whole world is going through it. And a lot of people have been like, oh, but I want this. Oh, but we can't all help one person's problem. I like to think of the collective, and maybe that's where I go wrong. Maybe I should be more selfish. But I've always found it so strange that people would prefer that their communities, their cities change and adapt for them instead of trying to find the in-between. Let's adapt some and then see and bridge the gaps of where our adaptations end, our limitations begin, and what can be realistically done within reason, finances, policies, society, just life, to make it a more accessible world. A lot of times, especially in Canada, there's policies in place to prevent there being discrimination against legally blind people, people of visual impairments, people of color, just anyone that might be of a minority. And a lot of times, it takes one person to break the rules. It takes one person to pretend like they don't know that that's a policy or not, just simply not care. A lot of times I find people are like, oh, but you're blind, so there should be so many services out there for you. And there really isn't. And again, I'm coming from a stance of knowing how grateful I am and I should be for what I have, but also knowing that there's some room for there to be more job banks for legally blind people and more opportunities and more career paths than just like the simple 5 that everyone always pushes down our throats. I know a lot of people think that because I'm visually impaired, there's going to be things in order to help make it easier, to help make my life more like almost like affirmative action for disabled people. But it really isn't like that. Like a lot of people are afraid to hire a visually impaired person because they think of us as liabilities. A lot of people just don't want to deal with it. You don't have to have your life all planned out or figured out or be more specific or more serious because you're visually impaired. This misconception, or maybe it's just opinion that opposes mine, is just, it's not it. I think it's more pressure for us to feel like, oh, because we're blind, we have to take the career path of getting into finance or higher education to be part of is it the White Castle when you're like a PhD student and you pursue the highest education so that whatever you know knowledge-wise is making up for what you're losing in your vision. Yeah, cool, okay. I commend anyone who pursues anything as long as they're passionate about it, but for the sake of trying to put themselves in a box when you're already in a box. I ain't cool with that. Ooh, this one. So I think it is harder to have been born blind than to become legally blind. I've spoken to blind people who've been so gracious and said it's the other way around. I've spoken to legally blind people who've been born legally blind or diagnosed at a younger age than myself and said it's the other way around. But I think that it is worse. You know when they say, is it better to have had and lost or to never have had at all? I prefer looking back at my life and knowing for the first 19 years that I didn't know what Stargardt disease was. Like, I went through elementary school, middle school, high school, part of university, I would say about half of university, without having to worry at all about how my vision was going to affect my life. It wasn't until I started to learn to drive and I'm like, hold up, what's going on? Can't really see the stop sign. That's not good. That I was like, wait a second. And then your whole life kind of gets flipped upside down. So yes, there's the hard part of having to readjust and knowing to live life one way for so long. But I cannot fathom how difficult it is to never had to kind of have an awareness or knowing that there's colors, there's sights, there's things to see and things to experience that you can't experience and never have experienced. But that's just me. So I would rather have lived my life and been diagnosed when I was and being diagnosed earlier and maybe adjusted and adapted better. I know it's really warped and weird, but that's just how I feel. And so many blind people disagree with me. They're like, I'd rather be born with the worst amount of vision than have it get worse. And I was like that for a long time. I was always like, you know what? This disease would be so much better if it just hit me all at once, one day, and it never got worse. Because I would never have to adjust. I would never have to feel depressed every single time. I would never have to be like, oh shoot, when I open my eyes in the morning, is it better? Is it the same? Oh shoot, it's worse. It happens sometimes. But when I look at the bigger picture, I am so grateful that I've had the ability to make eye contact, to have inside jokes across the room, to be able to cross the street without thinking about like how many seconds do I have because I can't see the ticker, to learn to drive, to jet ski, to rollerblade, to ride my bike. There's a lot of things that I can't do anymore, and I'm so happy that I at least got to have a taste of that before it was taken away. I even hate the idea of being taken away, but they reach for the stars and fall amongst the clouds. That's what my grandma used to say before she passed away. I think it's so beautiful to still pursue, to still think that you can, within reason. Like, don't try and become a pilot or a submarine driver. Is that what you call them? I don't know. Do things within reason. Sight is going to be an obstacle and a limitation, but don't put yourself into a bubble because you think you can't or because someone else tells you you can't. Get to the point where you physically and mentally cannot, and then push yourself and see if you can get past that. And if you can't, take it for what it is and just know that you tried, because that's how you build confidence. But don't sell yourself short because you are already limited. And I stress this in a lot of videos most recently because it's something that I realized in myself. A lot of times I would be limiting myself and like, girl, you can't go for that, or you shouldn't be this, or you should be grateful for just this because, I mean, you're suffering with Stargardts. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, I think Stargardts gives you the reason. It gives you the fire to actually keep propelling yourself forward and see what you're capable of in spite of your sight loss. So I'm going to end off the video there. Those are all my unpopular opinions. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts. Click over here if you want to hang out with me a little while longer. As always, stay safe, stay sane, stay blessed, and until next time, love and later.